Okay, so in the previous video, we talked about how to learn successfully for Chidon, some tips. Today, we're just going to go through some basics of how the Chidon system works over the course of the year. What is the curriculum? What are these tests that we keep hearing about? When are the tests? What do they look like? How do I break down the year into sections? So let's talk about those things. So, the Chidon curriculum this year, as ordained by the Chidon fairies, wherever they are, somewhere in Israel, I believe, is that it will be most of Shemot, not all of it, but most of it. They're skipping Truma Tetzaveh for some reason. I like Truma Tetzaveh, but they're skipping Truma Tetzaveh, but they're doing Shemot, Prakim 1 through 24, chapters 1 through 24, and then they're skipping, and then 30 to 34, and then they're skipping, and then Perek 40. So a good part of Shemot, but not all of it. All of the book of Shoftim, which the students probably learned last year or 2 years ago, depending on how old they are. They learned it in 5th grade in Dot. So that should be familiar, and it's not such a difficult book either. Megillat Esther, again, they're familiar with that from their life. The book of Yonah, not too difficult. So there's really nothing too difficult. There is quite a bit, as always, as there is every year. But most of it's not terribly difficult material. It's stuff they're familiar with. Maybe Mishpatim will be a little challenging in Shemot. But most of Shemot, all of Shoftim, all of Megillat Esther, and all of the book of Yonah. Now, how does that break down in terms of the tests? So the Chidon gives 3 tests, besides the national at the end of the year, if you make it that far. But there are 3 regional tests, and the tests are when they are. So the first one will be Wednesday, November 28, 2018. That is when the date is. Now, if you're sick that day or you're away, we can extend that by a day or two. By the way, this calendar is also at this link up here. If you want to see this calendar on your own, you can probably download it. You can certainly see it on the screen. That's the URL up there. The tests are when they are. They don't want people to take them a different day, even if it's a few days later, unless you really need. If you're sick, that's fine. You can take it a day later or something. If you're out of town, that's different. But just to come into school and say, you know what, I really wish I had an extra few days to study, we can't really do that because that wouldn't be fair to everyone else in the country that would also like to have a few more days to study. So they really want to keep the tests on the days that they say that they are, although occasionally they change the dates and make them later. But as of now, this is when they are. And the first one is there, and the material on the first one is most of the Shemot material that you have to do. Shemot, Prakim 1 through 24. The rest of Shemot will be on test 2, which is in February, along with all of Shoftim. That's a big one. And we'll come back to that later. And then test 3 is a month after test 2, and that's on Esther and Yonah. So test 1 is on this material. Test 2 is on this material. Test 3 is on this material. Now you can go ahead if you're ready for test 1 a few weeks early, and you want to go ahead and learn the second group of material, begin the second unit of material, go right ahead. It won't change the test. The test will only include material from Prakim 1 through 24, but you can learn ahead. You can learn later. You can learn the later stuff earlier if you want to, and that may not be a bad idea, because we'll see later that they were generous over here and a little less generous over here and over here in terms of the time. Okay, so how does this break down? So I did the following. I saw this, and I broke it down as follows. I remember the first test is November 28, and it's on Prakim 1 through 24. So we've got the end of August. We're lucky. Our school starts early, so we have a few more weeks for Chidon. Most schools aren't starting until around here because of Labor Day. Labor Day's here, so they start here. We actually have a few more weeks, which I guess is nice in terms of Chidon. So you've got August, September, October, November. I've marked some of the holidays, but it really doesn't matter because if you don't learn on the holidays, it's going to be challenging. You got to be ready to learn on the holidays and on Shabbat. So what I've done here is on the right, I say what prakim should you probably be doing during those weeks, give or take, right? You can be a little bit, this is only my calendar. You can be behind or certainly ahead, but if you're starting, assuming you're starting at the beginning of the school year, and assuming you would like to get to this test by Perek 24 by the test, so the way I broke it down is about 2 prakim a week. Right, so Perek 1, the first week of school, It's a short week. And then you got 2 prakim a week, obviously, give or take, right? If you're a little behind and you catch up later, it's fine as long as you're, up to Perek 24 by the test. The test is over here, November 28th, that's the test. Thanksgiving's over here, test is over here. And I have us finishing Perek 24 over there. Remember, the test is up to Perek 24, test 1. Then there's a couple weeks of review. Again, if you feel like you can go on and do Perek 30 through 34, very fine. But officially you have to get to Perek 24, and then there's some review time, and then the test is over there. Again, the test is when it is. It's not really negotiable unless you are sick or you're away. Basically, the test is when it is. We'll talk later about when in the day. Okay, so the tests are when they are. A little bit more about the tests here. As I said, they should be on the day that they say they are, preferably. The tests are written by the Chidon people. They send them to me. I give them out. They're scored by me using an answer key that they send me as well. As I said, there are 3 regional tests. We call them regional tests because they are, as it would sound, broken up into regions of the country. We're in the West region. So I don't know how many regions there are exactly, but they've broken the country. The Chidon people have broken up the country into regions. So you're competing with other kids in your region, meaning that the scores that you do are taken into account in connection or in comparison with other kids in your region to determine whether you'll go to the nationals. They don't usually tell us, or they've never really told us exactly how many kids take it. There's a lot of secrets here. We don't know how well you have to do in any given year, how many kids took it in any given year, and what the average had to be. But basically, if you get about a 20 on each test, there are 30 questions on a test. If you get about a 20, that's usually pretty good in terms of going national. Obviously, if you get 30 out of 30 on each test, then you're definitely going national. But if you get 20, that's a pretty good goal to shoot for. There are 30 questions on a test. They're multiple choice. They're in Hebrew. I can translate words that are in Hebrew on the test if they're not words from a pasuk. So the questions are in Hebrew. If they're quoting a pasuk, I can't tell you what those words mean that they want you to know. But if there's other words on the test in Hebrew that you don't know, I'm allowed to tell you what those mean. When they're taken, they have to be taken in school. I have to proctor them. They could be taken during lunch. They could be taken after school, I suppose, during Tanakh class. If you can work that out with your Tanakh teacher, those are all good options. But sometime during the school or right after school, but in the building, is necessary. If you score well enough as compared with the other people in your region, then, and again, that's a vague notion. It depends on the year, depends how other people in your region do. Then you're invited to the nationals in May in New York. You don't have to go, but you're invited to participate in the nationals in New York, which is at a rotation of schools in New York in May, and the date was announced later in the year. So just going back again, we have these 3 tests. Now remember, the first one you have a lot more time, partly because we start school early in Denver. You only have about 2 months between test 1 and test 2. You have November 28th, February 4th, so you have really December and January. And you have about 20, and you have about 25 prakim on that test. If you count this up, it's about 20, 25, 26 prakim. So that's going to be about 3 prakim a week, because you have 8 weeks, 26 prakim. It's going to be more like 3 prakim a week than 2. So the first test, you have about 2 prakim a week, right? And then that lands you over here to Perek 24, and then you have the test over here, even with review weeks. The second unit and the third unit, they're not as generous. You only have 2 months here, 1 month here. And the amount doesn't change. You have 24 prakim here and 26 over here. So you have 1 fewer month and 2 more prakim. And then from here to here, you have a month to study from test 2 to test 3. And you have, about 14 prakim. So again, do the math yourself. It's going to end up more than 2 prakim a week. So, you start out a little bit easier. and then it gets into more like 3 or maybe even 4 prakim a week. Although again, Esther and Yonah are both fairly easy, which will help. Shoftim also is fairly easy. Shoftim, again, is not a difficult book, and you probably learned it last year in school. The only other thing I would say, unless I've covered all of this, yeah, I think so. The only other thing I would say is that it's about consistency over depth. Meaning, it's not about knowing it this goes back to the previous video too. It's not that you've thought about the psukim in tremendous depth, although that will help you in life. It's about consistency. What I mean is, if you start over here, right, or even before this in the summer, but if you start the first day of school or really close to it, you'll be able to get to here 2 prakim a week. That's realistic. If you wait until a few weeks before the test, you can already see that learning 24 prakim in the final 2 or 3 weeks before the test would be nearly impossible. That's 8 prakim a week. I mean, you can try it, but you're not going to get a 30 on the test probably. But if you start at the beginning and you're consistent and you just, you take out that chumash 2 prakim a week, or maybe 3 prakim a week later in the year, but to start with 2 prakim a week, you're going to get it done, and it's not going to be that difficult. The difference between people who do well on Chidon and people who don't is not how I don't want to say that. It's not how deeply they went into it, how much they analyzed the Chumash or the Tanakh. It's really the consistency. It's that they started earlier and they were doing it every night, right? Even on Shabbat, or maybe especially on Shabbat, even on holidays. If you take September off, right, because of the holidays, then you're going to end up with more to do down the line. And again, the test is when it is. I can't really change it, except by maybe a day or two if there's a tremendous need. So those are, I think, some of the most important points about how Chidon works in terms of the year. Make sure you ask me any questions you have. I'd be happy to answer them either now or in the future. Thanks for watching. Oh, before we go, I wanted to show you one more thing. Almost forgot. Glad we didn't say goodbye yet. Here we go. We looked at this a little bit last time, but just to show you again, what I'm showing you on the screen here is last year's third regional test. So this is what it would look like to have a regional test. This is, as I said, regional test number 3, 2017, grade 6 through 8. This was on the end of Mulachim Bet. That's from last year, not this year. And you have 25 or 30 questions, or 30 questions. Multiple choice. A lot of Almi Ne'amar, who was this pasuk said about? Was this pasuk said about Elisha, or Yehoiachin, or Barzillai, or Gedaliahu? Questions like that. Mi Amar El Mi, you'll notice that. But the questions we talked about last time, but just notice they're in Hebrew. There's 30 of them. They're multiple choice. So for a question like this, Bimei Eza Melech Ne'amar B'Pasuk Haba, in the days of what king was the following pasuk talking about? So I could translate these words for you that I have my mouse over now, but because that's just Hebrew that they made up. I could not translate these words for you because that's the actual pasuk. Let's see if there's another example. Out of Almina Amar, it's Mi Amar Almi. So I could translate words for you that are not. Oh, here we go. Malakach ito Naaman Me'eretz Yisrael. What did Naaman take with him? Naaman take with him from Eretz Yisrael. Kasher hu nirpa, when he was sick, and he left Elisha. So if you're not sure what nirpa means, I will be able to help you with that, or azav, or kasher. But I would not be able, or even actually these words probably, because these are also not from Psukim. I think that would be okay. But words from the pasuk, which in this case are bold, a lot of bold, those I could not help you with. So that just gives you an idea. Again, if you have any questions at all, you can let me know anytime now or during the year. Thanks for watching.